Okay, hello everyone. Welcome back, Talmidim. And today we're going to continue, actually an exciting day. We're going to actually start the actual machlokes about Yiush Mida'as. And we're going to jump in to the Gemara with Abaye and Rava that argue whether or not it's considered Yiush if something was lost. We're going to go back to the page of the Gemara inside, okay, and we'll review just yesterday's learning, and I'm going to do it here in the Gemara. We had the first word was itmar. Itmar we learned. Yiush shalom Mida'as, right? So Yiush shalom Mida'as here refers to, just a moment. Let's see if I can do it. Oh, okay. So Yiush shalom Mida'as, let's see if we could do some marks here. Yiush shalom Mida'as, what's the halacha if again, Yiush shalom Mida'as means that the person lost something and then he didn't know that it was found, somebody picked it up, but he hadn't been miyayish yet. Then later on, when he gets home, he remember the guy in the bus, he realized, excuse me, that he lost it, but the person took it, he wasn't miyayish. Abaye Amar lo have yish. Abaye says it's not considered yish. The Rava Amar have yish. Okay, Rava says this is yish. Now, again, if you're looking in your Gemara homework, in the Gemara workbook, this that we're doing now, the review would be Shiurim Zayin and Ches, 7 and 8. And now we're going to start the test, but we'll first finish the Gemara. So, B'davasha yesh by Simin, in something that has a Simin in it, Kuli Amalai Pligi. Everybody agrees that if there is a Simin, the person's not miyayish, so you can't keep it. Delay have a yish. Everybody agrees. Kuli Amalai Pligi delay have a yish. They all agree that it's not considered yish. Va'af agaf the shamine, even though we heard him, you see the word shma there, like shma or shmiya to hear. The miyayish that it l'saif, even though we hear that he gave up at the end, lo have a yish. It's not considered yish. Dechi asaliyade, by the time it came to his hand, Isura huda asaliyade. The finder took it when he wasn't permitted to take it. Okay, so let's go back very quickly, and there's a few diagrams that are the same because it's the same Mitziyus, but here. So we have the sheet of Rava, but as far as we're concerned, let's go through the story. So the fellow dropped this item of his, right? He dropped that here. When the person picked it up, it was 2:00. So he didn't know about it the owner didn't know about it until he was on the way home at 4:00. So when he took it be'isser. So let's go back. Let's see those words inside again. This is really talking about tefillin, right? Not corn chips, but the idea. I wanted to just show you the time on the bus. Even though we hear when he says, "Oh yeah, I lost it." Lo have a yesh the 2:00 when he took it. The isuru hu the asaliyade. It came in his hands be'isser. Why? If he would have known that it fell from him, lo miyayish, he wouldn't be miyayish. Why? Meimar Amar, he would say, it's like a double language, but Meimar Amar, he would say a saying. That's probably how you would translate it best, but we just translated. He would say, Simana Isla Begavai, I have a Simin. So why should I give up hope? Yehivna Simana, I'll give up my Simin, I'll hand over my Simin, Vishakelnalei, period. Okay? So this is the case where everybody agrees that it's not considered yish, and the person cannot keep it. Bezuta shel yam, if it got caught up in the tide of the ocean rose and took his thing away. Ubeshilasa shel nahar, and the river overflowed. Afagaf the isbe simin, even if there is a simin. Rachman Sharia, the Torah said that it's mutter, kidbeinan lemeimar lekaman, like we're going to say later on. And the Gemara does this from time to time. Usually, it's not when the Gemara says, a lot of times Rashi will say, Mefarish, will explain, the Gemara will explain, or will explain later. That usually means it's more complicated than a simple yes or no. In this case, it has to do with the pasuk, and because it's a little complicated, we just said the Torah says it's okay, and we'll talk about it later. Ki pligi, when do they argue? And that's the Gemara we're going to start today, when they actually argue. But Davasha ain't by Simin, if there's no Simin in it. Back to the corn chips on the bus. Abaye Amar lo have a yish. right? So Abaye would say, in this case, it's not called Yiush, right? Abaye would say in this case, it wouldn't be called Yiush, even though he picked it up there, and the person would have been the Yiush, but he wasn't, right? So the Gemara says, "Lo have a Yiush." It's not Yiush. Why? The Halayada the Naflamina. He didn't know that it fell down. Period. Okay. Rava Amahava Yiush. Rava says it is Yiush. The Lechi Yada the Naflamina. Now that he knew that it fell from him, Miyayish. He does give up hope. Meimar Amar Simana Lesla Begava. I don't have a Simin. So Mehashta, from this moment, who the Miyayish. And that ends the introduction. Now we know that we see that word Simin is going to go take us right into today's Gemara. So we know that the case that we're going to be talking about, they would argue with each other in a case where there was not a Simin, and like this situation on the bus. Okay, so now we're ready to begin the discussion between Abaye and Rava. Now, since this is the first real Shaklavataria, real discussion, Rabbi Spivak gave a lot of text here to give you all the background information that you need, so that you can, and we have some more background on the next page. So buckle up and let's go. We're now ready to begin the debate, right? We're beginning a discussion between Rava and Abaye. As we explained at the end of the last year, we will attempt many rayas, we'll try many proofs. Some of the proofs will prove the shita of Abaye is correct, the Yish Lamidas is not Yish, and others will prove that the shita of Rava is correct, that Yish Shlamidas is Yish. However, as we explained, each of the rayas, except for the last one, will be disproven by a dechia. Dechia means to push, and we're going to push off the proof that Abaye wanted to bring and the proof that Rava wanted to bring. I just pulled up a section from the introduction to Gemara book, and I'm just quickly going to review this to talk about what a Shaklavataria would sound like. Okay, if you're looking it up in the Hachana Gemara book, it is Shiur Vav. And Rabbi Spivak gave an adorable example. David asked his brother Chaim, "Do you know what mommy's making for supper?" Chaim said, "We're having hamburgers." Now, so far, this here is this is a she'ela. What's mommy making for supper? That's a question. Chaim says, "We're having hamburgers." That's the second step. That's an answer to the question. And now he brings a proof. We call this a raya. I know this. How do I know that? Because I saw mommy taking out some ground beef out of the freezer this morning. Okay, so now we know that. Now that we know that he saw mommy, this is what his claim is, so he proved it. Well, responded David, that doesn't mean anything. Maybe we're having meatballs. So this is a dechia, just that we talked about. So remember, Chaim had a proof, and he says, no, what's the proof? And Chaim answers, yeah, but she bought hamburger buns. I saw her bought hamburger buns. So there's 5 steps here. There's she'ela, a teretz, a raya, a dechia, and then another raya. That last raya seems to be the end of the Gemara, but that's the pattern of how it flows and how we would understand the Gemara. So now, okay, as we learn an introduction to Gemara, there was a time that the Gemara was not written down. In order to know the sugya, the Chachamim had to memorize it. Certainly, this was always a difficult task, to memorize the Gemara. Just a moment. Okay, so it was a difficult task. However, in a sugya means a topic like this, where there are so many rayas we just had as a proof. It was even more difficult to remember all of the rayas in the correct order. So the Chachamim used to have a way of making it easier to memorize it. They had what's called a Simin, like a mnemonic device, which means a memory trick. It's called a Simin, to remember all the parts of the sugya. Okay, so we often have, we do this in English also from time to time, where we use the first letter of each word to say something. So here it's called a Simin. It's a way of remembering it, and they wrote it in parentheses. That's why it says, if you look at this phrase here, Simin, if you, sorry about that, if you look at that Simin in the Gemara, right here, we actually got to it just as we were starting. You see that Simin right here? This word here that says Simin is where it starts on the next line. And that's telling us it's just a way to remember each of the arguments that they made, each of the proofs that they tried to bring. One more thing, before, this will be easy because we just did it really. Before we learn the rayas and the chiyas, the proofs and the refutation of raya, a raya and a dechiyah is a proof and pushing it away. Let's review what we learned in lesson 8. Okay, sometimes the Gemara will seek to prove something which it says is correct. That's called a raya. That's a proof. To understand the raya, it's two things. First of all, what are we trying to prove? We need to know what statement we're trying to claim must be correct. We call that the object, what we're talking about. And if you'll see, just in advance, here you go. You see this? Now this is something that Rabbi does throughout the Perek. And it really is helpful. The object means what are we talking about? And the support is what are we proving it? That's, they see, this is a raya here. Okay, but let's go back to let's go back above. Web page is not responding. Okay. Just a moment. Cover web page. Oh, yeah. Let's see where we are. Okay. Just lost the page. I think you lost it. Okay, so, excuse me. I'm sorry, boys. Just give me one moment. Yes, it's the documents. Yes, last page. Just one moment, please. Front of the Yiush book. Here we go. Excuse me, boys. I'm sorry. Sometimes you just have to go with what happens. You plan something one way and then it just happens. So you do the best you can and you just go ahead. Okay, so we're in Shiur tests and we were talking about how it works with the raya, how that lays itself out in terms of the raya. Please just give me a second for the page to pop up. Okay, here we go. Okay, so this is what Rabbi was talking about. So the Gemara seeks to prove something that's correct. So there's an object and there's the support. There's two main types of rayas, using logic. Sometimes we could use logic. Logic means like a svara, to show that the statement must be true, like with the hamburgers, right? Mommy bought chopped meat. Or you could say a proof from an Atana that the Tanaim, where the people wrote the Mishnah, and Amira, the people in times of the Gemara weren't able to argue with the previous. They weren't able to argue with Tanaim. So if you got a proof from a Tana, that was pretty strong, and that would be a proof. Okay, a dechiyah is when we push it away, where it doesn't really come to that conclusion. So now let's begin. Amazing debate. Okay, the machlokes tashma come in here. Now, if you look at this, whoops. If you look at this right here, this thing here, this Yiush Mida'as with Rabbi, let me show you what it is. It's an icon that Rabbi uses throughout this discussion of Yiush Mida'as. It says here, Yiush Mida'as, raya number 1, that's proof number 1, first proof for the Shita of Rava. So red, we'll see later, Rabbi uses blue for abaya. There's no reason for that specifically, but just to distinguish between the two of them. So let's go. So the Gemara introduces this step and all the rayas in the sugya with the word tashma. Ta is come, shma is here. So come listen. The words tell us that we're about to prove something or try to prove it. Therefore, the words are usually the start of a raya. Sometimes it could be actually a tshuva, an answer also. So let's learn the actual proof. Remember, the machlokes Abaye and Rava is only in cases where the Mitziyus does not have a Simin, okay, does not have a Simin, one thing, and the owner does not know where he lost it. It has to be both of them. because if not, he would never be miyayish. If we can find a Mishnah or a Brisa that teaches this case in halacha, it would be a good proof to Yiush Midas, and let's go. So the Gemara says like this: Peiros mefuzarin. We learned back in the first Mishnah, we learned about peiros that was scattered. Matzah peiros mefuzarin. If he found peiros that was scattered, so the halacha is you're allowed to keep it. If they find peiros in one place, we had a number of examples of things that were of objects that were scattered. If there was money scattered, if there were fruit scattered, that meant nobody put it down responsibly in one place. So here's the question: Peiros mefuzarin, right? Peiros mefuzarin. We learned in the Mishnah that if somebody finds, again, this is the exact translation. Scattered produce is the translation of Peiros mefuzarin. But the backstory is we learned in the Mishnah that if somebody finds scattered produce, he could keep it. But I'll ask you a kasha. The owner didn't know that it fell. So this would seem to be a proof to Rava, right? Abaya would say it's not Yiush. Let's go read what Rabbi said. The first case in the Mishnah was about scattered produce. We're right here now. This produce had no Simin. So there's a very good chance that when the finder found the produce, the owner still did not know that he lost it. This seems to be a case of Yiush Midas, which Abai and Rava argue, because remember, they only argue where there is a Simin. Excuse me, there's not a Simin, I'm sorry, where he found it and there isn't a Simin. The Mishnah taught us the finder of a produce may keep it. This seems to be a proof for the Shita of Rava. Rava seems to win this one, that Yiush Shalom Midas is considered Yiush. After all, if Abaya was correct, that Yiush Shalom Midas is not considered Yiush, the finder would not be allowed to keep the produce. Okay, so therefore we would not be able to keep the produce. We wouldn't be able to keep these peiros because the person didn't know about it. Now again, let's compare it. Matzah peiros mefuzarin. If you found peiros that was scattered, this really seems to be like the corn chips. He found peiros on the ground. He doesn't know that it fell down. So the same way that we had this, where is it? Here we go. Like this illustration here with the bus, this seems to be exactly like peiros mefuzarin, right? He just dropped this down on the ground. Somebody else picks it up. He didn't know that he was miyayish. So who said that the guy saw him was miyayish? How could the Mishnah say, and this is a Mishnah, we can't argue with the Mishnah. How could the Mishnah say that if somebody finds peiros spread out, he's allowed to keep it? He doesn't even know that it fell from him. Okay, so the object, the thing we're trying to prove Rava, that Rava's right. We're trying to prove the Shita of Rava, Yiush Shalom Midas Hav Yiush. That's really important because sometimes like the pieces seem to move around and it gets confusing. So it's really important to understand this right. So we're talking about what do we want to prove? We want to prove that Rava's right. And what's the support? Peiros mefuzarin. The Mishnah said that he's allowed to keep peiros mefuzarin, but who said he lost it? Okay, so that's the object and the support. In order to disprove this raya, let's read Rebbe's text here. In order to disprove this raya, we'll need to find a way to explain that the case of scattered produce is not really Yiush Shalom Midas. We'll have to find the thing that we're assuming incorrectly, the Hava Amina. Hava Amina is what we thought in the first place, and correct it with the maskana, with the final pshat. Fortunately, the Gemara has already done it for us in the last sugya, so now we'll remind us what we learned. Ha'amar Rav Ukva Bar Chama says, Hacha, in this case, b'machnashta dibeidari, we're talking about the gathering on the threshing floor. This doesn't say the Beidari, right? It says the Bizri. We'll get to that in a minute. B'machnashta dibeidari askinon, it's not talking that he took the grain home or the fruits and he just dropped them on the way and didn't know they were there. It's talking about the floor where the threshing was done. With the threshing was the animals, if like a peanut has like a little shell on top of it, and it has a hard shell and a soft shell. So grain sort of looks like that. Wheat kernels there's a outer, this stuff that they have to take off, and underneath there was a hard kernel. So to peel one at a time, could you imagine how long that would take to bake bread? So what they would do is they would put it on the floor in an area, and they would have the animals come. You'd have cows, horses, mules, whatever they had, would walk around on the grain, and that walking would separate. Just like if you go like this with your hands on it, with peanuts with that thin shell, it comes right off. So that's what they used to do. Now, the Aveda Mida'as, that is not called an Aveda. He knew about it. So when they finished the day's work, there were these small little pieces here. There was little pieces here that were, so it wasn't that he lost it. He just doesn't bother to pick it up. Okay? So the Gemara, let's go. The Gemara explains how a Havamina was that the Mishnah was talking about a case that the owner had lost his produce, right? And he didn't know about it. However, the Maskana is the Mishnah was talking where the owner intentionally left it. Is the most important word. He intentionally means on purpose. He had intent. Intentionally, right? And he had intent. He left some produce behind because it wasn't worth it to go back and get it. That's the reason why the finder can keep it. So it's not Yesh Mida'as at all. So we're pushing it away. What was the Havamina? What did we think in the first place? We were assuming that we would have a raya. The Mishnah was talking about grain which was lost, and then it would be just like the corn chips in that other case. And the Maskana, the final pshat is, the Mishnah was discussing grain which was intentionally left behind on the threshing floor. In this shiur, the Gemara tries to prove the shita of Rav is correct. However, at the end of the shiur, we do not have a successful proof. Now, if you remember, I said before, this Machnashta, the Bizri, and we change it to the Beidari, we're going to explain this. Rabbi has an explanation here, and we're going to get to that in the next year. Okay, we're going to get to a lot of new things. Let's digest what we have, and let's review very quickly. This is the beginning. Shiur test is the beginning of the first raya, the first proof. We're trying to prove that Rava was correct, and that's this icon here. And the case was, what was the case? Peiros mefuzarin. This is straight from a Mishnah, so we know we have to follow this. Halayada denafim, but he didn't know it fell down. So that would seem to be just like the corn chips on the bus. So we thought the thing we're trying to prove was that Rav is right. The support was Peiros mefuzarin hare Eilu shalai, these words. Peiros mefuzarin, the words in the Mishnah, spread out Peiros, belong to him. But the Gemara says at the end, Ha'amar, Ravuk for Barchama, Ravuk Barchama said, no, Hacha, in this case, the Machnashta will say, the Beidari, Askinan, it's talking about the threshing floor, the Aveda Mida'as. So it wasn't a lost object. They just, they finished threshing, they picked up all the stuff. There's some little tiny crumbs on the floor, small kernels. They're not going to bother with it. So it wasn't an Aveda. It's more like he made it hefker, which we call it, something that's ownerless. So because of that, we move on. I'm going to do the Bach to the Hagais. This is a text correction. We'll explain this next time, and we'll go over the review sheets for this very first Shakla V'Tarya for the back and forth discussion about this Gemara, about trying to prove Rava first. Okay, I hope you found this helpful, and keep chazering, keep reviewing, and we'll see you at the next year. Thank you.